Serving over 50 communities throughout the valley, this is the Okanagan's very own CHBC.
Good evening. It's being called a suspicious fire, and it certainly was a visible one. Smoke was soaring into the skies over Oyama this morning as an old packing house building went up in flames. How did it start? And a nightmare for a Lower Mainland family. Their 10-year-old daughter is abducted from their home while everyone was asleep. Today she was found dead. Tonight, a suspect is in custody. And the trial begins 2 years after a confrontation between residents of a Kelowna neighborhood and the teenage drivers who say they were trying to slow down. Mike Roberts has the Okanagan weather, and Pat Kennedy is in with sports. This is CHBC News at 11. It could be seen from miles away, a huge column of smoke billowing high over Oyama as fire destroyed most of one of the community's oldest buildings. Firefighters got the call at about 5:30 this morning. They are still at the scene, and so is CHBC reporter Blaine Gaffney, who brings us more on the fire. Fire crews are expected to have the fire completely out by sometime later this evening. It was just over a year ago. The disappearance of a little girl believed kidnapped from her front yard in Kelowna sparked a province-wide search and led to hundreds of people volunteering their time and prayers to help bring 8-year-old Mindy Tran home safely. Tragically, Mindy's body was found buried in a shallow grave near the family's home, almost 2 months later. Today we take a look back at the third day in the search for Mindy Tran.
I'm sick.
Anyone who's seen my sister, can you please call the RCMP? Please help us. And whoever has kidnapped her, please let her go, because she doesn't deserve it. She doesn't know anything. And we really want her back.
The pain and anguish that consumes the family of missing 8-year-old Mindy Tran poured out in an appeal to the little girl's abductor yesterday. Today, that emotional appeal set the tone for what is the third day in the search for the missing girl. The RCMP are still following their only solid lead, a possible sighting of Mindy being forced into a pickup truck yesterday at a local Dairy Queen.
It's still a very valid tip, and we're certainly looking at it very serious. Unfortunately, we haven't come up with anything that we can release at this time, but we are looking, and we will continue to look all day.
What they are looking for is a full-size pickup truck with a canopy, possibly a GMC or Chevy product. The truck and canopy are both dark brown in color, and the canopy has a narrow window running the entire length. While the tip has given some hope for searchers, there is still very little for them to go on.
How's the search going?
Not good. We're covering the areas, doing the job, but not good in so much we're having no success. And virtually nothing to go on. So we're still in the dark.
We're going to hit that where those horses are and stuff down at the end. There's supposedly a little bit of a swamp back in there. Once we get there, we'll all go in there and we'll all have a good search around. And look.
Searchers are still hopeful they will find Mindy. They have expanded the search area, and over 200 people spent the day looking through wooded areas and backyards.
Let's do this area now. And what we'd like to do is just maybe take a look around the edge of the yard and stuff like that, just see if if we might see anything or not. If that's fine with you.
For the third day in a row, an RCMP helicopter was in the air, looking for any sign of the missing girl.
We've checked this river extensively, the park, the first couple days. Over on the right here, this is Lock here. We've checked that numerous times. There's all kinds of debris and garbage, and it's really hard to tell if you have anything. We'll just go over another little area here that's fairly close to the house, and it's all forest.
If she's down there, will you find her up here?
Well, we're hoping to.
Back on the ground, the RCMP met with the children in Mindy's neighborhood, hoping they will remember something important regarding the disappearance and to provide counseling for the children.
I need for my children to be able to talk.
Has it been tough?
Yeah, actually, Jessica just found out, so it's been tough. I've been here without them. They just came into town, so.
The search for Mindy Tran will continue tomorrow, providing some hope for a family that wants their little girl back safe and sound. In Kelowna, Brent Stafford, CHBC News.
For decades, natives in BC and across Canada became victims of sexual abuse by the people who ran their residential schools. The schools were set up across the country by Ottawa, the provinces, and the churches who were picked to operate them. The last school was closed in the early 1970s, but the emotional scars they left behind are still affecting Native communities today. Many Okanagan natives lived through the nightmare of sexual abuse, and we spoke to one Okanagan native today about his time in a residential school and about a new RCMP task force to help bring the abusers to justice. We warn you, some of the language in this story may not be suitable for all viewers.
Their childhood memories are horrific.
It just torments you to hell.
Haunting memories of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. Most suffered at the hands of the priests and nuns who ran the native residential school system. The residential schools were set up in the 1800s in an attempt to assimilate natives into white society. The idea was to remove native children from their communities and eradicate their culture and language.
The beating that we took for speaking our language, we used to get severely beaten. At times you couldn't close your hand. It'd be so swollen.
But the loss of language and culture through brutal acts of violence was only the beginning.
Priests that come into our rooms, and at times they would ask favors for want to give you better stuff than the rest of the students for favors, for sexual favors, of groping, assaulting you, trying to shove their finger up your anus and groping your penis and falling you down there.
And these were the people that ran the school?
Yes. They
were
white
people?
Yes, they were the priests and the nuns.
McCallum is not the only native who suffered such horrors. Hundreds of BC natives are victims of the residential school system.
There is a tremendous amount of anger out there that is just below the surface.
At a First Nations summit meeting in Vancouver last week, Native leaders met with a 9-member RCMP task force set up to investigate and charge the operators of the residential schools.
You know, those were criminal acts back in the 50s, 60s, 20s, 30s, 40s, and they still are today, and those people need to be held accountable.
The RCMP already have 90 suspects, and in a few cases they have enough evidence to lay charges. But they admit it may be difficult to bring some of the accused to justice.
They're going to be in their more senior years. Some are going to be deceased. Some may be infirm or in that category where Crown Counsel chooses not to, in the public's interest, to go ahead. And then thirdly, the police will have to try to locate an individual we may only have a partial name of.
So as the RCMP investigate, natives like McCallum, who lived through the nightmare, try to strike a balance between the desire to see their abusers brought to justice and the ability to put their past behind them.
And let's clear the air so that the healing can begin.
And is it going to help, do you think?
Yes, it will. Yes.
In Kelowna, Brent Stafford, CHBC News.
And finally tonight, a flashback to the night when over 50,000 disgruntled Vancouver Canuck hockey fans took to the streets and tore the city of Vancouver apart in the name of Lord Stanley's Cup.
And it did get ugly, Rick. They had some fights and this kind of stuff broke out.
We had people in bars throughout the afternoon. They had to get into the pubs and bars early in order to get a seat. Police say they just spent the day drinking, and now they're in a surly mood, and they've come out onto the streets. Brent Stafford is one of our photographers. He's in Vancouver tonight, and he's standing on Robson Street, armed with a cellular, right in the middle of things. Good evening, Brent.
Hi, Rick. They started out being quite the celebration for the Vancouver Canucks tonight. With their 3-2 loss, everybody came out just to celebrate and just to say thank you very much for the Vancouver Canucks. But after a while, things started to take a turn for the worse. There was at least 50 or 60,000 people down here, down on the corner of Robson and Thurlow. People were walking on the high wires, and at one point somebody actually fell from the high wire straight onto the ground about one story, and that's sort of what sparked off, I guess what you could call a mini riot.
Now, what did happen is to get the riot police in there all of a sudden. Did people start doing some damage to buildings or cars?
Well, at one point, just up from Robson and Thurlow, people started taking broom handles and breaking glass windows for stores just on Robson Street. And because the RCMP or the local police here were having problems getting to the person who had fell, calling in the ambulance, and the ambulance couldn't get to him, they started to fire tear gas to move the crowd back. They eventually forced the crowd back to the corner of Robson and Butte, and at that point, the crowd started to come back towards the police and began challenging them. There was at least 50 police in riot gear with batons and their shields, and Vancouver fans were chanting, "Rangers suck, Rangers suck."